Today's lesson is about resource acquisition, nutrition, and transport in vascular plants. As you remember, plants have three main organs: roots, stems, and leaves. Down below here in the roots area of the plant, it absorbs water and minerals through the soil. Here up above, you have leaves and stems, and the leaves are the photosynthetic organ of the plant, where the plant is able to do photosynthesis to convert light energy into stored chemical potential energy in the form of sugars. Plants require a variety of elements to be able to survive and reproduce. The macronutrients are the ones needed in large amounts. This includes schnapps, the elements involved there, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. What you need to keep in mind is that nitrogen is the most important nutrient that plants need for survival. Now, micronutrients are ones needed in small amounts like iron, manganese, zinc, and copper because they're important, such as vitamins and minerals, for enzymes to be able to function because these minerals serve as cofactors for enzymes. In this slide, you can see a variety of the nutrients required by plants and its purposes. Down below, you can see some problems that plants might experience if they are missing or deficient in nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. For plants to be able to survive well, they involve mutualistic relationships with other organisms, notably bacteria and fungi. Rhizobium bacteria live within the roots of plants and are able to help convert atmospheric nitrogen, which is plentiful in the atmosphere, but plants can't directly use that form of nitrogen. Instead, they need nitrates, and so the rhizobium bacteria help plants by converting atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates. And in return, plants provide sugar and amino acids. Now, plants also have a mutualistic relationship with fungi through a relationship called mycorrhizae, and myco refers to fungus, rhizae refers to roots. So this is a fungus and plant root relationship. In the picture, you can see that this is the fungus in purple, and it grows these extensions called hyphae that grow into the root area in between the cells, and it basically increases the surface area to increase the water and mineral absorption for plants. Fungi benefit because they get a place to live and receive some of the nutrients that plants are able to provide them. Within the soil, there's a variety of bacteria that play a role in the nutrition of plants because they are able to convert atmospheric nitrogen to other forms of nitrogen that plants are actually able to absorb and utilize. Besides our traditional plants, some have unusual nutritional adaptations, such as this plant right here. This is an epiphyte, and epiphytes are plants that grow in humid and conditions like the tropical rainforest, where there's a lot of rainfall in the air. And so these plants actually don't really need an extensive root system. They grow directly on the surface of other plants and absorb water from the rain through their leaves. Other plants are actually parasitic, like mistletoe, as you see in this tree, or this orange-colored plant that's wrapped around this other plant here. This orange plant is actually non-photosynthetic. You can see it's orange. It doesn't have the green chlorophyll pigments. And then Indian pipe, as you can see, it's white. It doesn't have any pigments at all, so it cannot do photosynthesis on its own. So all of these plants are examples of parasitic plants where they actually live on other photosynthetic plants and absorb the sugar and minerals from their living hosts. Some plants have unusual adaptations where they are actually carnivorous. And so these plants generally live in soil that is acidic and poor in nutrients like nitrogen and minerals. And so they need to supplement their diet by consuming prey. So some of these plants have adaptations to be able to attract and then capture and trap their prey, like these pitcher plants right here. The lip of this pitcher plant is very narrow and slippery, and once insects fall down in there, there's actually digestive juices and enzymes that are inside that pitcher that will break down and decompose its prey. The Venus flytrap, as you're pretty familiar with, has these leaves that actually are triggered where the prey, when the insects land on these leaves, little hairs are triggered and the leaves kind of snap shut, trapping their prey, and digestive juices break them down. Sundews operate by having the sticky sap material where their prey is attracted to it, either by its smell or its taste, and then it gets trapped there, and again, digestive enzymes break down their bodies so they can obtain additional nutrients. All right, in the next section of these notes, we're going to talk about how these nutrients, water and minerals, and sugar, amino acids, and hormones are transported throughout the plant. So this is a review diagram where you're seeing the different parts of the plant, including the roots and the stems and the leaves. In the root area, we're going to see water and minerals being absorbed in through the roots. They're going to travel through these blue arrows, as you're seeing, up through the plant through the process of transpiration, and the water evaporates out of the leaves into the atmosphere through stomata. On the right side, you're going to see processes that are shown in green arrows, and you'll see a downward arrows showing there because this is describing what happens to the products of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis occurs within the leaves that are green with the pigments and the chloroplasts, and they're going to convert sunlight energy into stored chemical potential energy and convert carbon dioxide into glucose, or those sugars. And then these sugars are going to go travel through this same transportation system and go to the places that need sugar, or places where we're going to store the sugars, such as in the roots. The transportation system of a plant is maintained through vascular tissue. Vascular tissue is continuous throughout the plant, so you're going to see in the veins of the leaf, through stems, and even through the roots area. Even as much as it branches, all of that will have vascular tissue. And within the vascular tissue, you're going to see these purple areas, whether it's in the roots or the stems or the leaves. All that purple area represents vascular tissue, which contains two types of tissue, xylem and phloem. So in this slide, we're going to explore xylem and phloem. Over here on the left, you see a picture of xylem, and it's composed of hollow tubes, and water and minerals travel up the xylem. These cells that created the xylem vessels are actually dead, and it allows the water and minerals to travel up through them through the process of transpiration. So xylem sap is composed of water and minerals. Over on the right side, you see an example of phloem. And phloem actually contains living cells because you have to load sugar and other materials into the phloem, and that requires living cells to do that. And phloem conducts sugar and organic compounds from the leaves to other parts of the plant. The phloem sap is actually sweet because it contains sugar such as sucrose, minerals, amino acids, and hormones. And the sugar is transported from the areas of the plant that make the sugar, called the source, to areas of the plant that require the sugar or will actually store it, and that's called the sink. Next, we're going to explore the transport of water. Most plants primarily absorb water from the soil through the roots. One of the structures that facilitates this process is that the cells lining the outside of the roots have these little extensions coming out called root hairs, which increases the surface area so that more water can be absorbed into the xylem. The other feature that we've talked about before is mycorrhizae, which is the symbiotic relationship between fungus and roots. And you can see in the picture on the right, all this white extension is the fungus, and the hyphae, those tentacle-like things, they grow in between the cells and the roots to increase water and mineral absorption. Transpiration is the main driving force that moves water from the soil into the roots and up through the plant and out of its leaves, where it evaporates into the air. The main reason this occurs is because water, as you can remember, moves from areas where there's a high water potential to a lower water potential. So the soil actually has a very high water potential. That's where a lot of water is. And you see the roots are going to have a lower water potential. And so as it continues to move up through the xylem vessels and evaporates out through the leaves, The outside air has a very, very low water potential, and so water will easily evaporate and move from the leaf into the outside air. Now this process is also aided by cohesion and adhesion. So cohesion is when water molecules stick together. Adhesion is when water molecules stick to other substances such as the xylem walls. So as water is evaporating out of the leaves, the water is being pulled up through the transpirational pull, but they're sticking together through cohesion, and so it forms this chain and gets pulled up. Water also avoids sliding down due to gravity because it sticks to the xylem vessels, and so it doesn't flow backwards. The pores in the leaves of plants, called stomata, regulate the rate of transpiration. And so when the pores open, like this picture on the left, carbon dioxide is able to go into the leaf and oxygen is able to be released. That's the waste product of photosynthesis. And transpiration is also able to occur where water can leave through these stomatal pores as well. The cells that flank the stomata are called guard cells, and when they fill up with water, they pop open and increase this hole. And when there is less water, these guard cells become flaccid. As you can see from the picture, water is leaving these cells and it closes that hole. Generally, these guard cells are stimulated to open by the presence of light, the loss of carbon dioxide in the leaf, and through circadian rhythms. And the stomata are stimulated to close in times of drought so that the plant conserves the water that's in there with high temperatures and when it's really windy outside. Because when it's windy, that drops the water potential in the atmosphere and there's a higher likelihood of water evaporating through the leaves. And so to conserve water for the plant, it will close the stomata. It's important for plants to be able to control the opening and closing of the stomata, and it's triggered by a variety of stimuli. Light and the loss of carbon dioxide in the leaf and circadian rhythms will cause these stomata to open up, and water can actually evaporate and gases can escape or enter. And during conditions such as drought, high temperatures, and wind, the stomata close to be able to prevent water loss and to reduce that. Next, we're going to focus on the transportation of sugar throughout the plant. Sugars are transported by the phloem through other parts of the plant through the process of translocation. Sugars are made in the leaves through the process of photosynthesis, and that is called the sugar source. The sugar sinks within a plant are places where sugar is utilized, such as growing parts of the plant. Sugar is also sent to fruits. And then if the plant doesn't need the extra sugar, it gets stored in the roots. And the phloem cells are actually alive because they're involved in the active transport of sugar from the source cells into the phloem. This diagram shows how sugar is transported from areas of sources, like in this leaf cell, to areas where there is a sugar sink, like in this root cell down at the bottom of the picture. So this source cell is where the leaves are, and you can see that there are chloroplasts within these cells, and this is where sugars are being produced, and sugars are loaded into these companion cells, which through active transport moves sugar into a highly concentrated area within the phloem. Now, in order for this phloem sap to be able to flow and to be moved to other parts of the plant, you're going to need water. And so phloem are usually located next to xylem vessels where water is being moved. And so when you load sugars in this source area in the phloem, water usually flows from an area of high water concentration to low water concentration, or water will go to where there is high solute. So as you can see in this picture, water is actually going to flow by diffusion into this sugar source area, cause higher pressure to build up here, and it will force water to basically flow to areas where there is less pressure. Down here, sugar is actually being offloaded by these companion cells and stored in root cells. And so because there's a lower concentration of sugars here, water will leave the phloem and enter the xylem again and be able to travel up the xylem. So both the processes of transpiration and translocation of sugars are tied together. One important feature of plants is that plant cells can communicate with each other. They're able to send chemical signals throughout the plant through the phloem. Because these cells are connected through channels called plasmodesmata, RNA and proteins, hormones and amino acids, and other chemical signals can travel from cell to cell throughout the plant. In fact, the phloem can carry rapid long-distance electrical signaling that is very similar to nerve-like action potential conduction through our nerve cells and allows cells to be able to communicate very quickly. This causes responses such as changes in gene expression and changes in the respiration or photosynthesis rates in a plant. Let's summarize today's lesson. The vascular tissue of a plant contains the xylem and phloem. In the xylem, you have water being moved from the roots up through the stems and out of the leaves through the process of transpiration. In the phloem, you have sugars being transported from sugar sources, such as photosynthesis happening in the leaves, to sugar sinks, such as roots, where the sugar is stored, leaves, where sugar is utilized, or other areas of the plant, such as fruits. In addition, cells in a plant can communicate with each other by sending chemical signals across plasmodesmata in between cells and through the phloem. Through these variety of processes, plants are able to survive and reproduce, and it's pretty remarkable what plants can do.